is actually just to look at the words. If I have the power to fly, that means it's in my natural ability. So sort of like in the Superman world, not in the Wonder Woman invisible plane world. That's a different world. Wonder Woman's invisible plane is not allowed to fly on Shabbat. We're talking about the Superman in my power to fly. I think I'm going to go with yes, but as I would just wear my tights and my cape and my mask. Maybe you can wear a tallis as a cape.
There's no problem with flying on Shabbat. It's like, walking or running. You're allowed to run, you're allowed to swim on Shabbat. The real question is teleportation, and that I'm not sure about. And all I can say is, as a Reform rabbi, it's between you and God whether you want to teleport on Shabbat or not.
We know that we're not allowed to go past the city limits, 2,000 amot, 2,000 cubits. So Superman really will have to gauge that distance and mark it out somehow for himself or anybody who flies like Superman, and then would have to hover, because you really just can't go 2,000 cubits more than that up in the air because you're past the city limits. And that
sometimes I fly. When I walk to shul, my kids think I'm flying just because I'm walking too fast and leaving them behind. But I'm not really flying, right? I think we could probably come up with something. If you're hovering, if you're not exerting too much energy while hovering, and you're flying to a place like a shul, which used to exist.
Shmuel in the Gemara, who follows the ruling of Rav Shimon in the Mishnah, that if one does not have the kavanah, lomit kavein, one does not have the intention to do a malach on Shabbos, it allows one to go, for example, from point A to point B without the intention of doing a malacha. That would completely be permissible.
In flying, the Talmud is very concerned even around riding a horse, lest one come to break a branch off of a tree and use it in the horse riding activity. So I would apply that here too. The flying, before Shabbat, one should chart out a flight map that would avoid, trees or any other obstacles that could lead to possible Shabbat violation.
Of course, there are those who forbid this. The most famous of these are three rabbis, Pinchas, Shaul, and Miriam, also known as Rabbis Peter, Paul, and Mary, who said in the name of Rabbi Yonatan Denver, also known as John Denver, this mashal, this parable about a person considering whether to take flight on Shabbat. All my bags are packed, I'm ready to go. I'm standing here outside your door. The taxi's waiting, he's blowing his horn, cause I'm leaving on a jet plane. One might think that this is an argument in favor of flight on Shabbat. If one may leave on a jet plane on Shabbat, then certainly one may fly. But the truth is, if chamistabra, the opposite is the case, because in this mashal, in this parable, the person never leaves. Read it from beginning to end. The taxi driver is blowing his horn, but this pious Jew does not spread their wings. They leave their bags packed until after Shabbat, and only then do they take flight. As Rabbi Denver comments, Ha'omed eno af, one who is standing cannot be flying at the same time. Birds may fly on Shabbat, but we may not.
That's a very apropos question, because actually a lot of my minyan is invisible. You can't count them unless you have some way of knowing that they are actually participating in the minyan and not just sitting there invisible on their phones or taking a nap or something like that. So how do you tell if they're really participating in the minyan? One way is if you can see the pages of the Siddur turning, then you know that in fact they are participating, and then you can count them. If you don't see the pages turn for a while, you have to ask yourself, are they just doing some internal prayer, or did they go ahead and fall asleep?
Well, in shul, the most important thing is to hear the voice of the chazan to be able to respond. Even during the time of the Beit HaMikdash, people responded Amen when hearing others saying Amen, and they weren't even in the actual congregation gathering area.
Actually is relevant to our time, because we have people who aren't comfortable davening inside the building with us. So when we have an indoor minyan, they sometimes want to be outside the walls, and you can't necessarily see them or hear. So the walls become a barrier, which is why somebody in the vestibule can't be counted. And the same thing, I feel like, because that person can't be seen, same thing with Mr. Invisible, that if you can't see him, that's a barrier to him being included.
In what ways could a zombie keep kosher?
If you go to the kosher mart, there is a section over in the corner where they have brains for the zombies. It's mostly for the zombie crowd, not exclusively. Of course, anyone can buy it, but mostly for the zombie crowd.
It could happen to anybody at any point in time. You don't know, right? So you know how there's different denominations in Judaism and different ways of keeping kosher. Turns out there's different denominations in zombieism, all the way from eating live organs or live Eiver min hachai, what's called in our Jewish law, which is forbidden. Eiver min hachai is a var, an organ or a member or a limb, chai from something that's alive. So you can't become one of those. You have to be less extreme. There are vegan zombies. Who knew? Yeah, I met them, like vegan zombies. Awesome. So
zombies should be looking for kosher certification on anything that they would be consuming. I don't know these days whether the OU is certifying humans. I haven't noticed any kosher marks on human beings lately. I would say OU star K, Chaf K is what I would suggest the zombies should be looking for on anything that they were going to partake. Now, you might say to me, but I thought humans weren't kosher. I would say whatever the OU says. If the OU puts an OU, they put it on aluminum foil. So if there is an OU on a human being, then I would say the zombie should go for it. Not what I would have expected, but these days we live in unprecedented times in so many ways.
Humans, never permitted. But nowadays, there are many types of plant-based meat substitutes, like Beyond Beef, for example. I believe with technological advancements, the zombie of 2021 has many kosher alternatives, which could easily satisfy the raw meat cravings, while simultaneously allow the zombie to keep kosher.
Could you imagine Rosh Chodesh on the moon? That would be so cool. Like good Chodesh, and you're like sitting on the moon, although it probably always feels like a full moon if you're on it.
There is a halacha on Shabbat that one should not walk with very big steps. Thinking about those canonical lines of, one small step for man and giant leap for mankind. Indeed, my understanding of movement on the moon is that it's largely by giant leaps. So I think we would have to consider a new sort of metric for movement on the moon that recognizes that our steps may be bigger and wider, but hopefully that's not an exceedingly onerous. There could be advantages to observing Shabbat and holidays in outer space, in that with zero gravity, our movement can be even more restful. So I think that's a potential advantage to observance of those practices.
It would be B'Tselem, in the image of the image. But you know what they say, like if A equals B and B equals C, then A equals C, right? So there you go.
I don't know. Does a cloned human being have a B'Tselem Elokim? Wow. Okay, somebody's going to be writing some serious stuff about this. It's not going to be me.
Yes and no, without a doubt. I want to offer really two contradictory answers to the question. The first is thinking about Tselem Elokim from a Mishnah in Sanhedrin. Human beings, if they make a coin, they create a mold, and they use that mold, and every single coin comes out looking exactly the same. Whereas God had the stamp of Adam, the first human, and emerging from Adam was an absolute diversity in which no two human beings are the same. And that's almost described as the definition of Tselem Elokim. A clone that's created from another human, if the DNA produces an absolute identical in every atom, in every atom, in every atom, to the original, on that measure, it seems hard to say that that second human is made B'Tselem Elokim, because they are a complete identical copy of the first, and in a way it cuts against the vision of God's creative power as being about creating difference.
On the flip side,
we experience Tselem Elokim as the humanity of every individual. And my understanding of cloning is that when I meet a clone, I won't have any way of discerning that that clone is any different than any other human. And in my experience of them, in my relational experience of them, I will feel their humanity. And if I feel their humanity, then I feel their Tselem Elokim. Then it seems to me, yes, they are made B'Tselem Elokim. Thanks to the RJCP and to you, Rabbi Joseph, for all you do.
Happy Purim to you and to everybody.
What a thought-provoking question.
According to halacha, according to law,
the Reform rabbi is always who people go to for halachic decisions. So
these were so easy.
There are rabbis who permit and rabbis who forbid.
I can't even, yeah.